Amazing. We'll just give it a minute or so for folks to hop on, and then we'll dive right in.
Great.
And as people are doing, maybe y'all could share where you're joining from. I'm joining from Atlanta, Georgia. What about you, Keith?
I'm in Irvine, California.
I am in
Fantastic.
Seattle,
Jesse?
Washington.
Wonderful. I
Seattle,
feel like we
Washington.
kind of have different parts covered. Amazing. Well, let's go ahead and kick it off. Thanks all for joining me today at this panel discussion about navigating the 2030 commitment. This panel discussion is sponsored by cove.tool, the leading technology-driven sustainability consulting firm working across 50 states in USA, Canada, EU, and the UK. cove.tool was recognized as the #1 most used energy modeling in the By the Numbers report for AIA 2030 DDX reporting for 2023. And shamelessly promoting it, I am Sandeep Ahuja, co-founder and CEO of cove.tool. I have had the honor of receiving prestigious awards like Forbes 30 Under 30, Inc. Top 100 CEOs, and presenting at the US Environment Assembly. Most recently, Wiley published my first book, Build Like It's End of the World, a practical guide to decarbonize architecture, engineering, and construction. Now, this passion for low carbon world is what I share in common with my two incredible panelists today. First up, I have the honor to introduce Keith Hempel. In his dual role as President and Chief Design Officer, he guides the firm's integrated design process, which connects building performance and design excellence on every project of scale or budget. A passionate advocate for the benefits of research-based multidiscipline approach, he is helping to lead the national industry forward to develop best practices for developing higher performance buildings that better serve people. Welcome, Keith.
Great to be here. Thank you.
I'm also joined by someone who is deeply integrated with AIA in moving us forward. Jesse Walton co-chairs the National AIA 2030 Working Group for 2024 to 2026 and coordinates updates to operationalize the embodied carbon programs and the Design Data Exchange, known as DDX subcommittee, which analyzes data from over 24,000 projects annually. Jesse is a senior project architect and sustainable design leader at Mahlum Architects and brings over 20 years of experience focused on sustainable education spaces. Known for his expertise in BIM, envelope design, energy efficiency, embodied carbon modeling, and energy code compliance, Jesse leads Mahlum's project sustainability leads meeting, addressing sustainability challenges on current projects. He has overseen the firm's AIA 2030 commitment, data collection, and visualization effort for over a decade. Welcome, Jesse. Amazing.
Thank you.
Well, let's
Thank
kind
you for the combo.
let's go ahead and kind of just kick it off because, again, both of you, when I think of you, I think of folks who really know what 2030 reporting is about, really know what it's like to drive changes from inside to sign for the commitment and follow through year over year. So if you could, Keith, perhaps kick us off and walk me through what was the catalyst, for your firm's commitment to 2030? What were the initial challenges you faced in aligning kind of everyone on the same page so y'all could do this?
Yeah, no, I think what was really critical to us in signing on for the 2030 commitment was adding an extra layer of rigor to our process. So the actual process of gathering data from all our project teams and reporting it on a yearly basis was something we weren't doing until we signed on to the 2030 commitment. So the process of doing that firm-wide on a yearly cadence brought a greater level of rigor to our process, which was amazing. I think the big challenges that kind of confronted us at the time, we were a firm most predominantly based in California, and we were tracking performance just measured against our local energy code, so Title 24 in California. So coming into the 2030 commitment, we had to learn a new set of metrics, right? We had to learn about predicted energy use intensity. And we also had to build the infrastructure within our project teams to accommodate the yearly reporting, which was done kind of project by project when the project was being permitted. Going to a yearly cadence offered some more challenges.
That's super insightful. I am curious, Jesse, because I know y'all have been reporting for some time as well. If you could walk through kind of not just the original, impetus for y'all signing up, but really over the years, like the key challenges and how you overcame them, because truly each year is so different. And to do the commitment year over year, it's truly remarkable.
Yeah, thanks, Sandeep. We've been doing AIA 2030 commitment reporting for 13 years now. I say original inspiration, if I can remember that far back. Our firm was really focused on project-specific goals, mostly around LEED. This was in the early aughts. And then I think the AI 2030 commitment came out, and we signed up for it the first year it was around. It just seemed like a really nice parallel to all the LEED projects we were doing, is to think about all of our work when it came to energy efficiency. And then I think, I agree with Keith, the initial challenges were kind of understanding predicted energy use intensity. We as architects weren't used to asking for that kind of data from our mechanical engineers. And so just getting everybody up to speed on the definitions and how to talk about energy efficiency and now emissions and carbon, I think was some of the initial challenges, and just who's reporting as well. Like, is it the project architect? Is it the project manager? Is it one person firm-wide? Is it a group of people firm-wide? Are you doing it in a DDX? Are you doing it bulk uploading? It was just like there was some stumbling around how to get a good rhythm going to report every year. And we landed on a small group of folks, I'd say a handful, every year collects the project data. We've got about 100 people in the office and a handful of folks that collect it every year.
Wow, it sounds like it's kind of been a journey on both of your all's ends, and at the respect integrated to the 2030 committee and to the process of reporting. How do you think about the process of reporting versus the process of sustainable design? Is it one and the same? Is it different? How should firms be thinking about that?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think it should be. I mean, I think every project team sets goals, right? When you're working with your clients, you begin the process of design by talking about goals, and that could be meeting a budget, could be meeting a schedule, it could be certain aesthetic, a certain aesthetic aspiration. All the goals should be the same, and sustainable goals should be no different. I think the mindset shift that needs to happen, though, is really connecting sustainability and design excellence, right? If you really truly believe that a high-performing building is a high-quality building and a beautiful building, then you're going to work the process in figuring out performance goals just like any other goal.
That makes sense. I can certainly agree with that and definitely see some examples of that. I am curious, Jesse, if you could kind of walk through specific changes your team made to design workflows to, be able to measure and then reduce carbon emissions.
Specific workflows. I think the biggest change in our design workflow is really about talking about predicted energy use intensity and now operational embodied carbon emissions on a regular basis. We were not doing it before. It was just project by project, depending on that specific goals, whether it was LEED or living building or WSSP is a regional sustainability rating system we use for K-12 work here in Washington State. But having that regular annual reporting really changed the way we think about sustainable design. But we push that further, and we actually talk about it internally, not just for the reporting process, but we have internal shares to our office, whether it's a design hour or whether it's a biannual report back to the partners on project updates. we have a slide or two that is just about the sustainability metrics that we're tracking in relationship to AIA 2030 commitment. So it's really just about that repetition of the process and just having it be common. That's changed our design process.
That is very, very insightful. So really, if I boil it down, it's talking about the things that matter and continuing to talk about them again and again and again. Is give or take is what you said in a much more convincing fashion, right?
You got it.
I am curious, like as you talk about talking about something time and time again, as a CEO of my company, who most definitely cares about decarbonization, I can tell you that what my team spends time on and how we measure success and what most of our meetings are about, right? Like any business owner can probably tell you, and as principals, I'm sure, you think about this all the time, is getting efficiency and productivity out of the team. So how do you think about cross-functional buy-in? How do you think about making sure that, maybe folks that don't care about this as much as you do are still partners to you in the process so that, I don't know, the whole firm can do it? Because what I've heard, at least in the last three questions, is that if not everyone is on the same page, it gets drastically harder. So how do you get everyone on the same page?
Yeah, I totally agree with Jesse, and we actually have a term for it here at LPA. We call it our institutional memory. That we know that LPA, our institutional memory, is 90 days. If we say something in January, the day-to-day grind on projects, the constant iteration with clients, and the cadence of the project flow, right? It's really fast-paced. So if 90 days goes by and we haven't brought it up again, chances are people aren't thinking about it. So if we talk about something in January, we're talking about it again in April, we're talking about it again in July, and we keep talking about it until the behavior and the kind of the resolution in our project designs and the pursuit of high performance starts showing up in every project.
Yeah, I'd say cross-functional buy-in when it comes to our internal teams. We've got project sustainability leads that are anywhere from like 1 year of experience to 20 plus years of experience on every team that's responsible for holding the information around the sustainable design goals, whether it's energy efficiency or materials or water use reduction, whatever the goals are, that person holds it. So we have like the internal buy-in on a project by project basis. I'd say here in the Pacific Northwest, we're lucky in that most of our clients have buy-in around energy efficiency and protection of our environmental resources. So there's not a lot of convincing most of the time for our clients to buy into sustainable design goals. Oftentimes they're fairly simple. They're just meeting the energy code or exceeding the energy code by X% or reducing emissions or not having fuel, not having, I think we lost Sandeep. There
no, I'm still here, and I could hear the whole time.
Not having fossil fuels in the building. Like there's sometimes it's small goals. It's not about 80% reduction from the 2003 CPEX baseline. Like they don't often care about the nitty gritty of the AIA 2030 commitment, but they do have other goals. So
I like that perspective because it really talks about, and I love the word institutional knowledge. I think, Keith, is what you said y'all call it. And I also love the fact of how realistic, at least y'all are, is that it's only 90 days. So if we haven't done it for a quarter, we better do it again because it's gone.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. I am curious, like as you think about the future, what do you think is on the horizon for your firm in terms of workflow innovation? How do you think AI affects what you're doing? If it does, maybe it doesn't as it relates to, sustainable design, but I'm just kind of curious on how you think about that.
Well, I think, being, Jesse and I both being involved with the 2030 working group, we've been, stressing the importance of project data. for years, right? And really, setting targets, tracking your progress, measuring if you achieved your targets, and then sharing those lessons learned back and creating that feedback loop, with data kind of being the proving ground, right? So I think everything we're seeing with AI is straight data driven, right? So it puts even more importance on the proper collection, and the understanding of our data. And if we can do that, if we can be really successful at that, then we're going to be able to leverage it even more fully with the coming technologies and tools that AI, is starting to develop for our industry.
That makes a lot of sense. Again, being so focused on data myself, I can truly appreciate it, which kind of takes me on another angle, I guess, or another way of thinking about the same question, because again, both of y'all have the unique perspective on being on the 2030, committee within the AIA, and being truly on the forefront of driving what might be coming. So if you wouldn't mind perhaps giving us a little bit of a sneak peek on what is on your all's mind, what are some of the conversations that you're having, what should we all be thinking about?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak to that one. So I think the biggest transition you're going to see at the AI 2030 commitment is really a direction shift towards emissions and less towards energy efficiency. The 2030 commitment has been so laser focused on energy reduction over this past decade plus, and I think in this past year we have new calculation tools inside the design data exchange that show each signatory firm that enters in project data what their emissions are based off of your regional grid emissions, also based off of your fuel sources, and if you have any renewables, if they're on-site or off-site. So having that understanding around operational emissions, I think is what you're really going to see changing. In addition to embodied carbon, we've seen an explosion in growth. I want to say 700-fold over the last 3 years. Like, it's insane how many projects we have now reporting embodied carbon. So and I think it's because we as architects actually control the materials we put into our building. We have a lot of control over what the embodied emissions are in our buildings. So we're tracking it. And there's going to be updates to align the embodied carbon tracking metrics with the ECHO project, the Embodied Carbon Harmonization and Optimization project. Did I get that right? I hope I got that acronym right.
Yeah.
Sounds right. So
well
yeah,
done, Jesse.
Emissions and embodied carbon are going to be the big updates you see in the DDX in the coming year.
Yeah, and I think too, one thing we're constantly striving for is industry alignment. So in addition to alignment with ECHO, right, alignment with SE 2050, MEP 2040, the Carbon Leadership Forum, the USGBC, right? There's a lot of conversations going on about building greater alignment, so that we're all talking about the same metrics, the same units, the same strategies, so that we can move the ball forward together faster.
Yeah, I mean, now more than ever, I mean, it feels like we're almost basically in 2025, which puts us about 5 years away from 2030. So I can certainly see the importance of aligning across the board. I am curious because on one end, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's no time. We got to go, 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 go. But on the other end is the reality of the matter, because I know that, I have firsthand experience, and I'm sure so do you in many capacities, of talking to firm leaders who are on the other side of the spectrum. They're not yet signatories. They're thinking about it. They're considering it. They haven't quite dipped their toes in it. I'd be curious if there's one or two things that they should take away from this conversation if they're considering dipping their toe and considering becoming a signatory and considering, starting the reporting process. Where should they start? Because it can certainly feel daunting.
Yeah, I would encourage everyone not to worry about only 5 years left, right? Is it too late to start? It's never too late to start, because at the end of the day, the process, the rigor we talked about, it's going to help you do better buildings. And I think we all want to do better buildings. So bringing this into your design process, bringing some of these workflows into how you approach design is just strictly going to help you do higher performing, better buildings.
That's a good perspective. That's probably a good way to think about it. I have also heard, and again, I'm not trying to be, the devil's advocate or anything. Like, listen, I care about decarbonization. That's why I exist. That's why I do what I do. But also, I run a business in Georgia. And not to say that Georgia's got the worst code, but it's definitely not Title 24. So how do you think about, like firms that are not in Seattle or California that don't have those rigorous energy codes to hit, for them to be able to think through that process and furthermore be able to get that internal buy-in? Because I think folks want to do it. It's about getting that buy-in that you've been so successful in doing.
It's tough to put myself in the shoes of somebody living in Atlanta without stringent energy codes. I don't know if I have a great answer because so much of the reductions we see, energy reductions, emissions reductions, come from our energy codes. I would say maybe looking to the most recent White House definition on a zero emission building, which uses the most current energy code as the measurement stick, right? So forcing yourself to look at a more progressive energy code. Our firm does the same thing with accessibility codes, right? We don't always just use the current accessibility code. We look to see what's the next version so we can make a better building. Keith, I don't know if you have a good answer for folks.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great question. I think the challenge to all of us as designers is to really speak in terms of design in the way our client values it, right? What is our client value? It may be, healthier buildings, right? So if we can create a passive building that uses natural ventilation and uses daylight, we can create a healthier building. It also creates a higher performing building. If we are thinking about terms of operational costs, how much does our new building cost us to operate year in, year out if we're going to hold on to the building for a long time? Well, we can do a high performing building that's going to save, tens, hundreds, depending on the size, tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on operational cost. So I think as designers, we have to be fluent enough in terms of sustainable design to take the missions and the values and the goals of our clients and reframe sustainability in a way that really speaks to what they're trying to achieve with their project.
I really, really like that perspective, because before anything else, we are architects. As architects, I guess what you're saying, or at least what I'm hearing, is that we owe the world great buildings, and sustainable design is not a separate thing that you tack on. It's a characteristic trait of a great building. Is at least
absolutely. I think that's probably the biggest mind shift that needs to happen, is that redefinition of what design excellence means. And the idea that an excellently designed building is high performing may seem kind of obvious to some of us, but it's not obvious to everyone. And I think that's the communication and the outreach we need to keep doing as design professionals who are really focused on climate responsive design.
I love that. And kind of like leaning on with that question and kind of building on it just a little bit more, I am curious if there is, I don't know, a project or story that comes to mind where you weren't necessarily pushing for, I don't know, just low carbon goals, but you were pushing for a great building, or you were trying to drive an incredible design, and that meant that it was also high performance. I'd just be curious if there's a project or a story that comes to mind that, our audience members can maybe even go Google after the session and be like, oh, that's really cool.
Good question. Obviously, there's a lot of projects to think about. I guess personally, and Jesse, I know I'll give you a little bit more time to think about and come up with a good example, because Mahlum has tons of them. We started doing.
Both of you do. That's why I ask. You do such incredible work.
Thank you. I think, we started working years ago with a small nonprofit that wanted to develop a environmental nature center in Newport Beach. And it was really about connecting people to the outdoors and really telling an ecological story, really blurring the lines between inside and out. And we got to talk about what that really meant and how that could really impact the building. All these goals started to grow out of that, right? Natural daylight, natural ventilation, passive shading, renewable energy. It all started to build on itself. And nonprofit, not a lot of money. It really became about how do we do this within the constraints of the project, wanting it to be for a certain cost, wanting it to be on time, and all of these great sustainable strategies. And it was just kind of an outgrowth of sitting down with a client and talking about what they wanted to achieve with the project and how that could become an even stronger sustainable story.
Very cool. I love that. Daylight, passive. I mean, it really is all related one-to-one, huh?
I think it's really about, as designers, we have all these strategies, right? They're kind of like arrows in our quiver. And it's like, knowing which one to pull out at the right time to help a client meet a goal or a target they're trying to hit with their project.
Yeah.
The project example that came to mind for our firm, as Keith was talking, was a K-12, public K-12 project for Seattle Public Schools called Thornton Creek Elementary School. It did not have strong energy efficiency goals. It was energy code minimum, but the client cared about energy efficiency. So when we brought to the table things like fiberglass windows, or we started detailing things like no thermal bridging at the slab edges and at the roof edges, and we started explaining why these things would be beneficial for thermal comfort, for energy efficiency. We weren't quantifying them in energy efficiency. We were quantifying them in more kind of qualitative ways, like this will prevent moisture from entering the building, so it'll make your building more durable. It'll last longer. That was what that was the main driver, I would say, of the project. And in the end, when the project was completed, it ended up being the lowest energy use intensity building in there. We also reduced window area. So we started with 30% window to wall ratio. We got it down to 24% window to wall ratio. It saved the client money, it saved maintenance, and it also reduced energy. So it was like this, didn't really have like any net zero goals, but just slowly through the process of thinking about each one of these sustainable design and maintenance issues, it ended up reducing the energy use overall.
That is so exciting. I love that it's not like some big flashy atrium with a lot of solar panels, which are wonderful too, but it's just, good old just working the design.
Yeah, well-oriented, low window to wall ratio, nice detailing. Yeah, 14.
That's incredible. Well, I know that we're running very close on time, so I certainly want to give you both the opportunity. If there's one document, one web link, anything that folks should check out that you'd like to plug, I want to give you the opportunity to share that out, so we can all go check it out and get familiarized with the 2030 commitment. And the reporting timeline is coming up soon, early next year. So if you could prep us all so we all go get running, listen to your advice, and do the right thing, that would be amazing.
Jesse, you want to take this one?
Sure. I think there's a number of AIA documents you can take a look at. There's a how to create a sustainability action plan that I think, Keith, you worked on.
Yep.
There's a AIA primer on renewable energy. There's AIA embodied carbon document in partnership with the CLF that talks about how to measure your embodied carbon. The reporting deadline is going to be at the end of March in 2025. So it's coming up soon. Go to the AIA's website, log in, sign up. Anything I missed, Keith?
Yeah, no, I think there's just a QR code in the corner of our monitors there that just takes you right to the 2030 commitment the 2030 commitment homepage, and everything that's the 2030 working group has been working on. You can find links there, and it's a great place to start the journey.
Lovely. Last question. It's a quick one. So if someone's not a signatory yet, can they soon become a signatory and also report with the March 30, like end of March deadline? So that's
Absolutely.
amazing. Okay,
Yeah,
so if y'all listening in, if you're not signed up, do it.
Yeah, and start with one project, right? It can be overwhelming to take on all your projects at once, depending on how big your firm is or what your firm's got going on. So start with one project, and what did you learn? What's the lessons learned? Can you apply those to your next project, and maybe move that to 2 or 3 projects, right? And slowly build consistency across the whole portfolio.
I love that. Bite a little piece, not the whole elephant. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Jesse. Your insights have been so phenomenal. I love and grateful. I'm grateful for the work that you have been doing on the 2030 committee. We need that work. Appreciate it. Happy to be a supporter. Happy to be a partner. Thank you both for hopping on and engaging in this wonderful conversation.
Thanks, Sandeep.